If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome back into the Escape Pod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And you are joining us in our Escape Pod suite at the One Heart campus. We are about to embark on a bit of true crime tragedy with, I hope, some lightheartedness later. I don't know.
She's looking at me. She has no idea what I wrote.
That's true.
Yeah.
I only know
She's
about
just
the true crime
please,
part.
Please let there be some lightheartedness.
Not so much.
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Well, darn it all.
So what I'll do is I'll throw some things in. Yeah.
Just make them up along the way.
Well, I'm just thinking, we were talking before we started recording that, we're going to tell you a story today about some pretty child abuse, religious abuse. So trigger warning. If those things are sensitivity to you, that this one might be a hard listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I mean, for as horrid as my biological mother is, at least I was never...
You weren't starved.
Tortured, right?
And tortured.
Yeah. So...
I said silver linings.
Silver linings.
To a not great childhood. But yeah, at least recognizing that, it could have been worse. Is that what the line is?
Could have been worse. Yeah. But there's definitely the theme of gaslighting in this too. Anyway, we'll get there. So What are you escaping today?
I was just going to say before we take off, well, I wish I were escaping from doing concession duty at the baseball field tonight, but I am not because I'm signed up, so I'm going. But when I signed up, I thought that'll be a good night to do it. No, turns out it wasn't, but it's okay. I'll go get it done. So it's fine. It's fine.
You live.
Somebody has to do it, so it might as well be me. You? What are you escaping from?
Oh, I think I have a list.
A list.
There's always a list. Yeah, I don't know. I think definitely escaping another chapter in the sordid drama with my parents.
Oh.
So that's nice.
See, we do have a parental theme today.
We do have a parental theme. So long story short, we've talked about my parent. So if you've listened to episodes
earlier
chronologically, you've heard some of the big stuff with my parents. And I've always said, it's my mom that I really don't like and appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who's gaslighted me all these years. My dad had his issues, but he's acknowledged those issues. He's thanked me for saving him from going to prison. He's never gaslighted me.
Mm-hmm.
He owns all of it. So there was an episode where my mother reached out to my kids a little too late.
Yeah.
My son graduated from college this month. We're recording this at the very end of May. And the comment was something like, well, I know graduations happen in May. She reaches out on May 22nd, mind you, to say, hey, we'd like to go to Alex's graduation. Not to us, to the kids. She's never going to text me again for as long as I live, and I'm cool with that. And so my daughter had to say, well,
it's over.
It happened. It happened. Well, why weren't we invited? And I could just hear oh my God, this guy's falling. They didn't think of me. Anyway, so this is how she is. She's just everything is about her. So the kids are like, well, look, you could have looked on UNL's website. You could have texted me. You could have texted mom and dad. You could have done something.
He's been a senior since August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. So anyway, it escalated, and my son finally just said, look, I didn't invite you because I didn't want you around my parents.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how to behave. And she can't behave around my mother-in-law either.
Yeah.
And this was my mother-in-law's first trip outside of her city since burying her husband a year and a half ago. And so it was a big deal. And it's not that they could have come had they just instead of waiting Venus flytraps for everything to come to them. Everybody else has to make the effort. They could have made the effort earlier. So, but the cool thing about it, all this to say, I'm not here just to bash her. It was that finally I didn't have that emotional reaction that I normally do. So I think I've hit a new level of, okay, we've been estranged for many years now. Like I've hit a new level of, this is so much healthier for me than continuing to try to have a relationship, because it would be like, like my husband said, when are you going to be done being Charlie Brown and having the football take? Like you keep trying, you keep extending the olive branch, you keep trying to be the adult. And there are just some people who are never going to mature and,
Yeah.
So screw it. That's what I'm escaping.
So I would say your give a damn is really busted. Like it's done now.
Like I feel, and it was cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
That is always nice. Not nearly the same thing, but I do remember kind of in college, one of the first boys I really had a thing for, and we had been friends for a long time before that. And I remember when I finally reached a point where like somebody said his name and I didn't, same thing, like, oh, I didn't react. And I took like mental note of like, oh, it actually,
I'm
it
over
took
it.
a long time, but it doesn't
I'm
hurt.
over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling.
It is. It's, there's a peace and contentment there that we all seek.
Yeah. Well, like the day before, again, this is just how I'm wired. I always want to take the high road. I always want to try to help other people be better versions of themselves. I mean, it's probably why I did coaching for so many years. But just the day before this last exchange between my mother and my children happened, I was thinking of writing an electronic letter to my mom to say, look, as soon as I send this, I'm going to block your number. I'm going to delete you. I'm not trying to engage with you. I want to tell you where you're running the risk of never having a relationship with your grandkids and hopefully get through to her. But after the horrible things she said to my son about me, I'm just like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. She wants to be miserable and right, and at any cost. I just feel really sorry for her because she has missed out on so many beautiful things and meaningful things. And I think about like when she dies, I bet you, can you see how many fingers I'm holding up? This is how many people are going to be at her funeral.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's so sad. Her life could be so rich and amazing, and she can't allow it for whatever reason, because she can't own fault or apologize, and it's really sad.
Do you think she was not mothered well?
That's a good question. My mama and papa, her parents were, they were fun grandparents as little as we got to see them. I have fond memories of them. I do believe that I've gleaned over many years of stories and things like that it was quite chaotic in their household growing up, thinking about being one of 7 in a dirt poor family, very unstable, probably some alcoholism involved. But we talk about that when people are in those states of hopelessness, they'll often either do things to cope. So any resources they get go towards whatever it is that's helping them cope, or like gambling in that sense of trying to foster hope. Like my life, and I can get better. I can provide better for my family if this, then that kind of a thing. And I think just having a group of, from what I have heard, a wild group of 7, particularly the brothers.
So you come by it naturally, that's what you're saying.
Hey, I got it on both sides. It was bound to happen. But so I don't think it was like a super tight, loving household. I mean, that whole epiphany I had of not wanting to, like not being comfortable hugging my adult daughter.
Yeah, and realizing where it came from.
Yeah. And so I imagine that's just, she's probably not even aware of these things. And I mean, this is all conjecture on my part.
Yeah.
The times I tried to drill down into some of those things, she won't talk about it.
See, that makes me think
I'm
it
like,
probably was not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was always to kind of described herself as like the black sheep of the 7. And now here I am, the black sheep of my litter, even though my litter is, yeah. So, it is interesting. I mean, but.
And I totally believe people can be different grandparents than they are parents. Because I've heard other people say, yeah, she wasn't a great mom, but she's been a great grandma.
They started out that way. They really did. I mean, there were some missteps in the earlier days, like when the first one was born, but they did. I do think they were better versions of themselves. Their mistake, in my opinion, was just we moved to this state to be near them so that my kids could have a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. Okay. When they're little, I kind of am part of the package deal.
Yeah.
Now that they're grown, my mom didn't need me as an intermediary. So that's when things started to become more volatile, which is fine, whatever. And so when all of the blowout happened, I told my kids, look, I'm not going to go into details, but I'm no longer going to have her in my life, which just by default means my father. And but I do encourage you to have a relationship. Don't let this impact your relationship with her. And they're both like, okay. And then over time, of course, I did tell them what happened and why I've made that decision. And, they're old enough to understand and still not be influenced by anything that I'm saying. I've taught them well how to accept or reject and make their own decisions. But she's just blown. But they moved away. So we were here for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And then they just up and left the state. Okay. And I think we've seen them maybe 3 times since they've moved. Yeah. Well, maybe a couple more times, because 1 or 2 of them were here and they were both
not great,
drama riddled.
Right.
Dad screaming out the window at people in Custer State Park. Get the fuck out of the. I mean, just like craziness. Or my mom scoffing and making a big, nuclear scene on the Murphy's patio because my mother-in-law's name was mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
And I just can't do it anymore. So anyway, so that's still what I'm escaping. It's definitely a work in progress here. So what are you escaping? Did we already talk about it?
We did.
Oh, but you said you weren't escaping.
Well, I am not escaping it. It's, I guess I get some of my money back when I go do it. You pay extra when you do the volunteer time, you get some money back. And I will take all the little bits here and there I can get. I don't care. I am not above throwing hot dogs and popcorn at people and taking their money in return. Okay, so speaking of mothers, I'll just start by saying I am not Mother of the Year. You are not Mother of the Year. Ruby Franke is really not Mother of the Year.
She's not. However, the more I dug into this story, I'm not saying she's 100% a victim.
Right, but she was a victim in part too.
I do believe she was in part. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of commenters online that have various opinions of this, but her partner in actual crime is Jodi Hildebrandt. So I'm going to talk about both of these women.
Okay.
But all of the children who were abused in the story I'm going to tell were Ruby Franke's children.
Okay.
So this is, I'm almost speechless because you wouldn't think something like this could happen, especially so visibly. I don't know if we've talked about Belle Gibson, an abusive influencer,
correct,
preying upon people, and this revolves around another so-called like influencer, a YouTube personality, right? So dating back to 2015, Ruby Franke, like so many people that we've talked about, addicted to stardom on social media, she launched a video blog or a vlog on YouTube called 8 Passengers. And it was documenting her Utah family's lives. She was married. She had 6 children. And I think, back in that time, there was a lot of attention being directed towards like Nadia Suleiman, Octomom, after giving birth to octuplets in 2009, and TV shows like 19 and Counting, and all that kind of a thing. And there was a market for it. So she followed the trend, I guess. And maybe she was looking for that same attention or fame and wealth. It worked for her. I mean, it really worked for her for a time. So her niche, however, came in the form of severe parenting practices.
Yeah, she was known for being a disciplinarian,
very harsh
and just kind of
disciplinarian.
Yeah, old school,
mentally more so than anything. And it did evolve. But a lot of people would see some of these things because I mean, they're in the car going to school, and guess what? She's videoing. It's like you know how I am with cameras.
Yeah.
Let alone video cameras.
Right.
I would be losing my mind as a child. I'd probably be acting out. So how much of what I'm going to disclose to you about her interpretation of these kids' behavior and why she needed to be the way she was with them is legitimate, hallucinated, or a byproduct of constantly being in the spotlight and not being able to be a child.
Right.
None of them are good, right? So, but again, a lot of people claimed this was straight up child abuse, and she started getting some negative attention. She was doing this at least 5 days a week. She amassed 2.5 million subscribers and more than 1 billion views. So it was out there. It's not something I subscribed to.
I was
going to
say I did not know her name until she was arrested.
Yeah. Same. Actually, you brought it to my attention, this one. Yeah. And then months later, after you mentioned it to me, I heard a podcast on it, and I was like, oh. And I'd already written this, but I was like, huh, okay.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is wild. So she was chronicling the lives of her husband, Kevin, and their children. And she had, 6 children. So at this point in time, Sherry's 20, Chad's 28, Julie's 14, Abby's 16, Russell's 12, and Eve is now 9. And because people watched, it kept feeding her habit. She became more and more extreme. It's like, it's almost like, what was that show? Jackass, where their stunts would get more and more extreme to continue to attract viewers and grow that base. I imagine, intentional or not, this is what she was doing. It's like, if I do more, then I'm going to gain more, right? And I would imagine she was monetizing this in some way because, they were living pretty well.
Okay.
So, but I think it's kind of like frogs in the boiling pot of water, right? So it's all incremental. So if the next thing is only a little worse than the previous thing, then it's not that bad.
Right.
Right. It just kind of keeps going and keeps going. But when it's compared to the starting point, right, the woman was off the charts. And some people started doing that, looking at look at how this is escalating. And so she started getting some negative attention, actually started taking some videos down, pretty soon stopped altogether. So August 30th of 2023, she and another woman, this is Jodi Hildebrandt, and this was a therapist that she had hired to mentor her.
Okay.
In a variety of ways. So Jodi was working with one of her quote unquote troubled children.
Okay.
I think I've been able to piece together that Jodi was also working for them in a marriage counseling capacity. And so her husband was working with them. And now at this point that the story happens, her husband is out of the house.
Okay.
He's been convinced that he's addicted to pornography and he has some things to go sort out.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's true. And I'm watching him in his own words. I watched videos of this. He's telling this story after Ruby gets arrested. And it's just so, well, I mean, I guess I was addicted to porn. It was just like this is what I was told. So I guess it's true. So anyway, I have a theory of brainwashing and things going on through this. I will definitely jump in with my opinions. You're welcome to, and I encourage you to too. But in August of 2023, Ruby and Jodi were both arrested for 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. And we'll get to why in a minute. But Ruby had gone on to collaborate with Jodi, who had a coaching practice and then a YouTube channel called Moms of Truth, which sounds really... questionable.
We won't name the podcast episode that, just so you know.
Okay, no. She was offering parenting advice for dealing with challenging children. And so it's kind of like, well, Ruby's already doing this successfully. So maybe if I can hook my cart to her wagon, this is going to be a big deal, right? So over time, you know, Jodi is now kind of integrated with this woman's family, with Ruby's family. Husband's out of the house. Older two kids were out somewhere. The oldest daughter, I think, was kind of estranged and just in college and doing her own thing and glad to get away. But she had her two youngest, Russell and Eve, staying at Jodi's house, presumably for intensive counseling because they were such problematic children. I should also tell you, kind of along the lines of the Duggar family in 19 and counting, this family was all members of, they were all Mormons, so Church of Latter-day Saints. And that does play a prevalent role in the things that have happened.
Okay. The Duggars were not Mormon.
No, exactly. They were
some kind of Baptist?
Biblical patriarchy movement, the independent fundamentalist Baptists. That's what they were. But I just mean very religious.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely different faiths, but it was kind of along that theme of,
Gotcha.
That their religion played a role in how they managed and raised their families. So how did we get to these arrests? You have two women on 6 counts of child abuse. And also, like, how freaking stupid do you have to be to do these things in view of millions of followers?
Right.
And think you're not going to get caught.
Right.
Right? Video trail. I mean, it's not, instead of breadcrumbs, it's so much easier to find the evidence.
It's well documented.
Well documented. So Ruby's estranged daughter, Sherry, had been raising concerns about what was happening to her siblings for years to authorities. And her pleas to child protection and law enforcement were going ignored, according to Sherry. So what happened is the two youngest were at Jodi's house. So Ruby wasn't even in the home supervising or caring for her kids. Okay. And as far as I could find, Jodi had no biological children of her own.
Okay.
And I will get to something a little bit later that with a family member that said she was also abused by Jodi, who is this person's aunt. So 12-year-old Russell escapes from a window in Jodi's home, and he flees to neighbors' houses. He's knocking on doors. He's going all over the place, asking for food and water. Can't get an answer until he gets to the last house. And this video footage, it was really hard to watch because he's so malnourished, but he's still like so polite and well-mannered. And I don't remember the exact words, but he's kind of like, yeah, I need help with 2 things. Well, okay. And then the guy is like, well, what can I help you with? I need to get taken to the nearest police station. And then he said, okay, maybe just that.
Oh, wow.
And I think he wanted to ask for food and water, but it was just like, okay, I'm out. We need to get this handled, right? Because he'd left his little sister in this home. He was severely malnourished. He was emaciated. And you can see it, just clothes bagging off of this poor kid. When asked what this was about, he said it was personal business. Just the sweetest little voice. And he was just so, you could see his bones poking through this clothes. I mean, he was just,
tiny.
I don't know that he was going to live much longer.
That's
he was
crazy.
that malnourished. And police also saw open wounds on his ankles and wrists.
Ew.
They thought right away from ropes. That did get validated later. He had duct tape on his ankles. The open wounds allegedly had been treated with honey and cayenne pepper. So pretty horrific. Not all natural remedies are user-friendly. And police found when they did go to Jodi's house, they found this 10-year-old sister also in Jodi's home, also severely malnourished, locked in a closet. They were taken in for medical attention, placed in child and family services care, along with 2 more siblings, the 2 next oldest. And Ruby and Jodi were charged initially with 6 counts of felony child abuse. And the Washington County, Utah Attorney's Office accused both women of causing or permitting serious injury to the children via a combination of multiple physical injuries or torture, starvation, or malnutrition that jeopardizes life and causing severe emotional harm. So that was from the court documents. And again, seeing video coverage from the police finding the little girl in the closet, I mean, she's terrified to come out. She wouldn't talk. She just sat like cross-legged on the floor, spine straight up, wouldn't move. And seems to that the abuse they were subjected to really escalated over about 6 months. So while the 2 youngest were being tortured at Jodi's house, the 2 middle kids were living at the home of a woman who was it? She owned like another coaching and counseling. They must have all run in a pack or something.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So who owned the coaching and counseling company. So once law enforcement is finally looking into all these claims, they discover all kinds of horror. So 2015 is when Ruby launched that 8 Passengers YouTube channel. And she would share just like, normal everyday activities, driving them from various places, family dinners. And I don't know about you, but when I was raising my kids, there's no way I had the time to follow them. I mean, doing that, filming it, or follow another whole family.
Right.
Like, I just don't understand the appeal. It kind of sounds ridiculous to me. But in 2020, followers, quote unquote, began leveling allegations of abuse after one of the sons, Chad, told viewers he'd lost bedroom privileges after pulling a prank on his younger brother, and he'd been sleeping on a beanbag chair as punishment.
Okay.
For 7 months.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Okay. And Ruby also often withheld food and water as punishment. And this was all documented. So she once forced her 6-year-old daughter to go hungry because the little girl had forgotten to pack and take her lunch to school that morning. A 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Guess what? They forget things sometimes.
Yeah.
They're not done.
Well,
their brains aren't done.
The problem is that now you're making the situation worse, right? Because now you just have a hungry child that you think they were doing something wrong in forgetting the lunch. Well, now, I mean, how well do you and I behave when we're hangry?
Right.
Children need fuel, and
if their needs aren't being met, it just exacerbates everything.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kindergartner.
Right. Yeah.
Good Lord. So people were appalled, rightfully so, in my opinion, by this. And thousands of viewers supported an online petition requesting an investigation into Ruby and her parenting techniques. She shut things down pretty quick after that. Are you sure I don't have the caffeine in my thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Julie and I ordered almost the same. They look the same.
They look the same.
Drinks. They were supposed to be different sizes, and they're not. And so... Anyway, I'm tripping over my words. It feels like my tongue's really fast. And
no, mine is the large.
Is it large?
Yeah, we're okay.
Look very much bigger. Okay, thank God.
Well, because I think they're wider at the top. Is
Okay.
Where you get the extra.
Well, I know my tongue's doing some funny things. I'm like, maybe I did get dosed. It's just caffeine, though. I get over it. All right. So Child Protection Services gets involved. I think that's where I left off. But they couldn't really substantiate anything at first.
That's interesting.
I
You have
know.
all the video evidence.
I know. But it's like, but then you get, I mean, we've seen it too. You see a little video. I mean,
That's
people do it all the
true.
time and it's taken out of context or
Sure.
whatever, right? So not in Ruby's defense, but we have seen this.
Yeah.
Many big
Fair.
cases where once you have the larger context, it's like, oh, that is not what I was led to believe at all by
Right.
the, 7-second clip or whatever.
Yeah. True.
So the case was closed and allegations persisted. Ruby finally deleted her account just in 2023. And that was when she began working with Jodi. And again, she'd hired Jodi, but she was also like collaborating, if you will, on a YouTube site that promoted itself as a support group for mothers to treat, quote unquote, children, quote, lost in the darkness of a distortion. So we're word salading this now and trying to make ourselves sound really smart, I guess. So Ruby signed on as a mental health coach under Jodi's business, allegedly.
Okay.
They also promoted posts together, promoted views that parents should not love their children unconditionally.
Okay.
And I did say, you did hear me right, should not love their children unconditionally, and that children did not deserve privacy.
Well, I tend to agree with that, but I feel like the way they're doing it is probably not okay. I feel like it's my job to keep my kids safe. Like, I am here to get them to 18 so they can be adults and do the best they can as adults. And I, especially in this day and age, I tend not to, they should know, I'm not spying on you, but I'm always spying on you.
Right.
You live in the house. It's my job to get you to become an adult. And some of that in this day and age is making sure you're safe with all the things that you do. Now, you can't hold their hand forever, and there has to be a recognition of that. But I'm not a big fan of like, you get to have secrets. Nope, you don't. I maybe don't need to know everything, but anything regarding your safety and security, I feel like I need to know.
See, and I think that's totally different because you're not compromising their safety or security.
No, right.
Whereas the children in this case were.
That's why I'm saying I think their methods are probably not what I'm talking about. But, as far as devices and all of those things, like, you're in my house and I'm here to raise you and get you to adulthood safely and support you along the way. And if you're into something you shouldn't be into, I need to know that. But it is not the same.
No, this definitely isn't the same. And they started taking some slack. I think later in in these notes, I have some testimonials from people who'd used Jodi's services. She wasn't that great. Anyway, there were also accusations from the stuff that they were posting of like racist, ableist, transphobic talk, just like a lot of fearful, hateful stuff. Plus all of this really like harsh parenting thing. Okay. So after the abuse was fully exposed, it was substantiated that both Sherry, the eldest daughter, and concerned neighbors had been trying to report to law enforcement that their concerns that the remaining children in the home were being mistreated. One anonymous neighbor said to NBC after trying to get law enforcement and CPS to take their concerns seriously, they said, "I'm really angry because I spoke up, other people spoke up. If people knew about the amount of tears and time spent talking with law enforcement and CPS over the last year, I want people to understand that. And I want those kids to know that because I think they thought they were abandoned."
Oh,
so people were trying.
Heartbreaking.
Yes, it is. But law enforcement claims they did follow up every time. And every time they attempted to make contact with the children, the kids refused to answer the door. It's like that, when you have a domestic abuse victim.
And you're so certain, you know that they're being abused, but they have
and the cops are there. And there's like a safe door. You could launch out that door, but the fear of that unknown is so much greater than enduring the horror that you're being subjected to. It's just it's so sad. Well, some of these harsh disciplinary techniques were corroborated when Jessie Hildebrandt, this was Jodi's niece, spoke with a local news station. Jessie had lived with their aunt. She goes by they, so if you hear me say they, I'm not misspeaking. This is their preference. Lived with their aunt 10 years prior, and claimed that Jodi subjected them to severe emotional, spiritual, and psychological abuse, and accused them of being a sex/porn addict and addicted to masturbation. They withheld tampons because that was a form of masturbation. So there were just some really, the therapy that Jodi administered.
I have no words for that. What do you even say to that?
I don't know. This woman was crazy. I mean, the things she would subject people under her care to as a counselor.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
Were just obscene. And so some of the therapy Jodi administered to her niece included barring them, like I said, from using tampons, having privacy in the bathroom. And this Jessie says, she wanted to make my life so uncomfortable that it would force sin out. And this continuously got worse and worse, Jessie said, accusing Hildebrandt of duct taping their mouth shut, blindfolding them, telling them they were, quote, too dangerous to be around other people, unquote, resulting in isolation periods of up to 12 hours a day. Jessie said they internalized their aunt's teachings to the point that they became afraid of themselves. Okay. I was forced to sleep outside in the snow, they recalled. If someone spoke to me directly, if I wasn't wearing duct tape on my mouth, I just had to stare at them and not respond.
Weird.
Jessie also claims that their aunt was supported by the Mormon church. We have a culture here of not believing children and not trusting children, according to Jessie. So that was interesting. And I think back to the stuff they were saying about the sex and porn addiction. And then when I was watching, I'd already watched the interview with the husband, Kevin, Ruby's husband, Kevin, and there was it's the same language. And
Right.
I'm like, so is there some brainwashing going on here?
A pattern.
That, you're being convinced. And I can't remember what the psychological term is of that, where therapists have the ability to like go plant a false memory or a false something in your mind, and then that starts to take root, and pretty soon you don't know if it's real or imagined or planted in this case. So anyway, I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm just saying that that's what I'm suspicious of.
It's an odd thing to have in common, of all things. Yeah.
Definitely. So once in custody, Ruby confessed to various forms of abuse, claiming she was influenced and manipulated by Jodi. She also admitted to binding her son's feet with handcuffs, kicking him while wearing boots, and holding his head underwater while smothering his nose and mouth, all while trying to convince him he was evil and possessed.
Ooh.
I think he was 9 at the time.
The story I think that I first read about her was making him stand outside in the sun.
I have that in here too.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Thinking he was possessed by the devil or a demon.
Oh, he was in her. I have some diary entries later on in these notes that give you some insight into what she was thinking about her kids. And it's off the charts.
Yeah.
Off the charts. But she and Hildebrand, and it sounds like Jodi was really more so the orchestrator of these wild disciplinarian schemes. As far as I could find, Ruby wasn't. She was doing some severe things, but not as severe as what we're talking about in this episode. So she and Hildebrand said they also forced the boy into hours of physical labor in the summer heat without food or water, or very little, caused him to be dehydrated and have blistering sunburns. And they claimed these were acts of love and attempt to save him from the devil, right? If he would just obey her, everything would be okay. That's what he was being told. Ruby also forced her 9-year-old daughter to run barefoot on dirt roads until her feet were blistered, jump into cactuses, and perform manual labor outdoors, again, without adequate food or water. These, she claimed, were all Jodi's influence. I know, I see the look on your face.
Well,
come on.
Yeah.
You can be influenced, but still, at what
You're still an adult.
Well, your mother instincts.
Yeah, it's
I mean, that
bizarre.
mama bear, if you're wired normally, that mama bear syndrome is severe. I mean, it's powerful, and I just don't know where it went. Like, I have no idea where it is in these cases. Like, she just keeps leaning in. Jodi says it's okay. Jodi's my savior. She's going to save my marriage and save my kids, and we're all going to be saved. So just keep leaning in. But, I mean, someone comes and tells me do these things to my kid.
Right.
I'm turning them in.
Right.
Like, there's zero chance I would comply with these things.
Right.
Therapist or no. I've dealt with some therapists who have abused their powers. And I'm just not buying it. She had a choice. She had a choice. There was no indication at any point in time that she was not mentally competent. So she had a choice.
Yeah.
And I am curious a little bit, like, is it possible that a religion where women are subservient to men part of like the issue? So, and again, this is just thinking out loud. Like, if Ruby was being subjected to this her whole life, being raised in this particular faith, was this now like the power of two women who now, like, there's nobody pulling their strings and directing them where to go, trying to inflict upon other people, in this case her children, the obedience that she was always having to bestow upon the men in the church. And I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to know how that kind of structure and suppression messes with somebody's mind at vulnerable ages. But is this like, well, I've been and I think about, like, we've talked about this before in the case of rape victims or molestations, any kind of sexual violence or assault, where it's been happening for generations. Yeah. And the mom or grandma are like, well, it happened to me too. I lived through it and I'm fine.
Right.
So we don't talk about it. We don't like.
Well, it's normalized to some extent.
Yeah. But is that part of it? I just don't know.
I lean more toward it's like the killer couple case we did coming out of Australia. This has been a few months ago now that episode was released. But I think of it probably more as two deranged people finding each other. Now, one still has the upper hand, still seems to kind of be the more powerful of the two.
Yeah.
But you have somebody else who also has some issues and is easily influenced, like the influencer was easily influenced. And so now you've basically multiplied the abuse. You've multiplied this extreme way of thinking. So I don't know. I've known Mormons who were incredible people.
I have too.
Maybe could be Mother of the Year.
I've also known some that weren't such great people.
Right.
But that goes for everything. It's not just.
Suspect, in my opinion, it's probably not as much about the religion as it is about the two personalities finding each other. That's what I suspect.
You think so?
I think so. It's hard to say.
All of the punishment, though, revolves around their interpretation of the religion. Like it's all.
Exactly, though, their interpretation. Yeah. Like, would another leader in the church even give them that interpretation? Not necessarily. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, I feel like they're finding these things in the religion, maybe like that's maybe is their interpretation, and then being together makes it that much more extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
It's really unfortunate that these two did find each other.
Right? It does happen, though. It's something that freaks me out. It's like this weird, like, odd fear, like
or maybe that's
my
what
fear
it
of
took.
flying.
Yeah.
It's like I also have a fear of like the violent person who finds another violent person.
So
and
what
then they
you just
commit
said
the
with
acts
you,
together.
like, fear, are you afraid of finding somebody like you? Should I be worried about something?
No.
Do you have a deep, dark secret that I don't know about?
Like, the nutty person who finds the next nutty person. And together, they're like 4 times as nutty. I'm doing,
That was
unusual math
journalism math. Okay.
Journalism math. It's probably a thing. It's a thing. No.
Oh, okay. Okay, rabbit hole. Okay. In February, Franke and Hildebrand both received identical sentences of up to 30 years in prison, although each woman was convicted on 4 of those 6 aggravated child abuse counts, carrying 1 to 15 years each.
Okay.
And Utah state law mandates that sentences served consecutively can't exceed 30 years. So that's just,
okay.
Otherwise it probably would have been forever. So 1 month after sentencing, the Washington County, Utah Attorney's Office released handwritten diaries in which Ruby detailed how she carried out her abuses, and which prosecutors said were, I didn't make it up. Prosecutors opined that these were motivated by religious extremism.
Okay.
The woman appeared to fully believe that the abuse they inflicted, this is a quote. Let me start over. Quote, the women appeared to fully believe that the abuse they inflicted was necessary to teach children how to properly repent for imagined sins and to cast the evil spirits out of their bodies, end quote. And this was what prosecutors stated. In redacted entries, Ruby repeatedly wrote that Russell and Eve were spawns of Satan.
Oh.
And I'm sorry, but that young man that I saw ringing, and this was caught on a doorbell camera, right?
Not the spawn of
no,
Satan.
just a precious little boy in desperate need of some safety. Another quote, I will not feed a demon. These are from her diaries. She claimed one of her sons was a compulsive liar with a cold, dead heart. She wrote about shaving the boy's head as punishment for refusing to perform wall sits and pushing him into the pool while covering his mouth and nose. Big day for evil, she wrote at the time. Franke also details how she punished her, quote, manipulative daughter, including making her stand out in the rain for hours and dousing her in dog wash water after she complained about not eating for days. In the entries, Franke rationalizes her punishments as ways to break the children's purported ties with the devil. Quote, if you engage a weak-minded soul in a physical activity of obedience, she wrote, you can begin to break the bond Satan made with the weak, end quote. So it's just crazy. It's heinous. It's lunacy.
It is lunacy, and it's sad. I mean, because that means part of her thought what she was doing was right.
Yeah. She thought she was saving these kids.
Yeah.
Other forms of abuse that were discovered through court proceedings. One of the little girls was pulled out of public school despite expressing being super happy there after the school played the song Apple Bottom Jeans. I don't know this song. But Julie was criticized, this is the little girl, for being overly talkative or blinking too much. I didn't know that was a thing, blinking too much.
Clearly.
Russell, the one who escaped, was seen being neglected, such as when he broke his femur and was not taken for medical care until a week later.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the youngest of the little girls, Eve, was depicted as being irresponsible after forgetting to take her lunch to school. So these are like the things their mother's writing about them. And if we wanted to, as parents, we can always find fault in our kids, right? We always can. But it's our job to protect them, like you were saying earlier, and shape them into young adults who can handle whatever life throws their way. Telling them they're demonic for being spacey or occasionally forgetful is just, it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Or fighting back when food and water are being withheld. Of course, they should fight back if food and water are being withheld. It doesn't mean they're possessed. It means they're starving.
Well, I feel less badly for telling my new teenager to turn his brain on sometimes.
Yeah, I think
that seems not
that's okay.
like the worst thing a parent could
I'm not
say
going
or
to turn
do.
you in for that.
Thank you.
You're safe.
And I say it like sternly, but with a wink. Like,
Yeah.
okay, buddy, time to
You
retain
can do this. Yeah.
some of what I'm saying to you. And the good thing is that I hear from other moms of teenage boys. Well, the bad news is most of them say, oh, it lasts a little while. And the good news is a lot of them say it's being a teenage boy. Like, this is what they do.
This is what they do.
Yeah.
I raised one.
So not...
Most of them get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not so abusive. I feel a little less bad for telling him.
And I
to
just,
turn on his brain.
I don't have any insight into the kids' mental state. Like if they were buying the things they were being told, if they believed these two.
I know. Hopefully
Hopefully
they
not.
are in a much better place now and have escaped. They've escaped the perpetrators, at least in this case, and hopefully will be able to get the help they need. If any of this sticks, that it can be worked
Be a
out.
rough life. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are some of the things that make me think about just that level of gaslighting that I've talked to you about with my own mother, not comprehending that in this case, Ruby was perhaps the cause of some of this distress. So these are some of her diary entries. Sunday, the next day we put E in the closet and contemplate what to do. She screams much of the day. She doesn't get water if she screams. She refuses to eat. I cut off more. Okay, let me try that again. I cut more hair off E's head. We doused her with the dog wash. She said she wanted to run away. Jodi told her she has no idea what is waiting for her.
Ooh.
Doesn't that sound
That's
really
scary.
terrible? This is Chad, admits to stealing water 3 times yesterday. Water. Stealing water. He lies and feels no remorse, Ruby wrote upon discovering that her eldest son was trying to keep himself alive by secretly retrieving water. To her 9-year-old, who turned 10 during this period, Franke would shave her hair as punishment for disobeying. All her long hair is gone. No more distracting with hair. This is why when law enforcement first rescued her, they thought she was a little boy. They mistook her for a little boy.
Oh.
So, quote, big day for evil. E manipulates me. She won't scream when Jodi is around, but with me, she wails all night. E screamed, cried, and would hit her head on the tile floor. Today, Jodi confronted her. E admits to putting on a show for her mother. E says she wants to be pitiful. R, Russell, was told to stand in the sun with a sun hat. He is defiant. I tell him a couple more times. R or I should say his demon stays in the shade. I push R into the sun, but R comes back. I come back with a cactus poker, and when I poke his back to get his attention, R doesn't even flinch. I poke him on the neck. He is in a trance and doesn't appear to feel anything. Jodi slaps him on the cheek to wake him up.
Ooh.
Isn't that just blood chilling?
Yeah.
I mean,
so weird. Ugh.
here's another one. When Eve was outside today, it was hot. She acted like she was dying, so pitiful. I told her the heat in hell is much hotter and God is going to burn the wicked, so either get used to it or start changing.
Oh my God.
This is a 9-year-old, Julie.
Oh, no. That is bonkers.
Makes my mom look like a saint, I guess.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's nutty.
So Ruby has 3 sisters herself. They were all influencers. And they got together and released a joint statement. For the last 3 years, we have kept quiet on the subject of our sister Ruby Franke for the sake of her children. Behind the public scene, we have done everything we could to try and make sure the kids were safe. We wouldn't feel right about moving forward with regular content without addressing the most recent events. Once we do, we will not be commenting on it further. Ruby was arrested, which needed to happen. Jodi was arrested, which needed to happen. The kids are now safe, which is the number one priority. So even her own family was like, nah.
Right.
Nah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But
So
going back to the influencer piece, which we haven't talked a lot about in this episode, but we did more in the diet influencer episode. I worry so much about our society and the influence of social media. And like you said, the attention early on before things got super weird likely fed this, right? To some extent. Now, you can't blame people for being interested in other people's lives. I mean, my gosh, I was a journal. I love hearing other people's stories. Love it, love it, love it. Love getting to know other people. Love hearing about their backgrounds, what they do. I genuinely am interested in other people. But you have to keep it within reason, like all things in moderation. To spend so much time, like you said, for her to spend so much time documenting their life, and then to have people obviously very interested in it to that extent, I just clearly in this case, it became dangerous.
I wonder what would have happened if followers hadn't started pushing
How long
back
might it have
and
gone on?
calling out.
So
like,
in that
hey.
regard, I guess, like, maybe it's a good thing it was all documented because now something could be done.
But would it have happened if she wasn't
would it have happened in
videoing?
chicken or egg?
Right. Exactly.
Who knows? Man.
Well, this whole time I'm reading that. I'm like, where the heck was Dad? There's
Where
a
was
father,
Dad?
and he started out in the 8 passengers thing, and then all of a sudden he's gone. Like, where did Dad go? So I looked into it. And there's police video when they bring him in. His name's Kevin Franke. And this guy seems totally clueless as he's being read the Miranda warning. He just keeps, like, he looks baffled. I got a call. I'm here to pick up my kids. I don't know what's going on. Like, he has no idea. And at first he wouldn't even tell the detectives in the interrogation room who called him to come pick up his kids. And then finally he says it was Ruby. But he did not know what was going on. He claims he had not lived with nor seen his family for about a year, longer than a year. He claims he was separated from his wife. He knew the date he'd last seen his children, which was July 25th of 22. The 2 older children who moved out, Kevin claimed, and he stayed away because he thought somehow he had been convinced it was best for his family. So God knows what Jodi was telling him. He'd insinuated that he'd made some poor choices. Mm-hmm. And wanted to honor her wishes of reflecting how he treated her while they were separated. So, and even when, I know not always, it's not 100% accurate, but much of the time, you can tell when somebody is ashamed of something they're telling you and somebody that's not convinced of something they're telling you. Like, there's just, body language is so powerful, right? And sometimes you can't put a finger on it, but you know what that result is. That's what I was thinking watching this guy. I'm just like, he's he's telling the detective something he's been told and convinced to believe. And I'm not convinced he believes it. Anyway, it was really interesting. He was not aware that his 2 youngest children were living at Jodi's house. He had no idea any of this was going on. Their arrangement was that Ruby, would physically take care of the kids during their separation, and he would take care of the bills. So he had, all that going for him. And when police finally tell Kevin what was going on with their kids, I mean, his face, he's just like shocked. Like he didn't like, what do you mean emaciated? Like he didn't even know, he couldn't comprehend that his kids were in this state.
That's crazy.
It was really crazy. Duct tape had covered rope burns that were used to tie the kids down. Like when the detectives told him about the injuries on his children, he starts crying. And we later learned that this wasn't the first time this young boy, Russell, had attempted to run away. He'd been trying to get out of this house for some time. He ran away from Ruby once, too.
A little escape artist, and finally it worked.
We like him.
Yeah.
So Jodi didn't believe she did anything wrong. According to jailhouse phone calls and claims to want to protect the kids, she even said that, yes, they put ropes on Russell, but they didn't make him roll around, causing the ropes to cut into him. He did that. We just put ropes on him. I mean, weird. We didn't cause that. Even Ruby said this whole thing was a witch hunt and that the kids' injuries were overblown. The devil had been out for her for years. Poor baby. So Kevin,
might be now,
understandably, files for divorce.
Yeah.
After Ruby's guilty plea. He's a civil engineering professor at Brigham Young University. So, fortunately, he has something to fall back on other than 8 passengers. And let's see, I just lost my place. Oh, okay. So this was at the sentencing. Ruby said it best, quote, "I'll never stop crying for hurting your tender souls," she said to her children, who were not present during the sentencing hearing. "My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good." She did look somewhat sincere when she was saying this, crying, and when she made a statement to her husband, she was really in tears. Jodi's statement, I don't think she was feeling a damn thing. She stopped short of apologizing, but basically said she loves the children and wants them to heal. And that's why she's not fighting anything and accepted a plea deal instead of going to trial, because she wanted to spare the children of having to relive their trauma by testifying. Bullshit.
I would agree.
She did it because everything was going to be laid bare, and she wanted to save her own damn reputation as much as she could.
Well, and she probably didn't want a worse sentence potentially than what she was already pleading to. So
just do not believe a word that woman says. Even Kevin Franke requested that his wife be given the maximum sentence. Once his brain actually comprehended everything that law enforcement was telling him, he's just like, yeah. Back to Jodi's niece, Jessie, when they came forward and talked about the abuse they had endured, they described it as brutal. "She would lock me in this room and make me write out my sins on paper. She made me sleep outside in the snow. I was blindfolded. I experienced severe isolation," just on and on. So these are parenting techniques, I guess. I didn't get that manual when I became a parent.
No.
I mean, did you?
No. Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So Jessie, who had been 16 years old when placed in their aunt's care, and just said, yeah, I was a typical angsty teenager from a strict family. And her family, their family didn't know what to deal. So they talk about that. I was living in Corona, California. We go to Utah for my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. We had a big party. I got into a fight with my mom. I went downstairs, fell asleep, and woke up to a knock on the door that my parents had left and that I wasn't going with them. And that my life, as I knew it, was about to change. They left her at Jodi's house. Jodi is very smart in how she approaches her therapeutic modalities because they are so extreme. If she were just to start out with those things, everyone would recognize it and they would be shocked.
Right.
She's very subtle. She's very calculated. It's like a frog
in the pan
in water. You start off with cold, you slowly turn up the temperature. She would give me a piece of paper, have me write out my sins so that she could read them back to me and have me get on my hands and knees and beg for forgiveness as she read them to me. She strips you of identity. She strips you of credibility, and she isolates you. She's saying that everything you say is a lie. Everything you say is a manipulation. You're manipulating everyone around you. You're lying and destroying everyone's life. So for the sake of everyone else's safety, we're duct taping you. Aside from the duct tape, this sounds like somebody I know in my life that's just gaslight. You can't win when you're dealing with somebody like that. So for fun, I wanted to go see how former clients thought of Jodi's work, so I hunted down some reviews. I'll read a couple to you.
1 star. I'm going to go out on a limb. One-star reviews.
Stars. She wasn't brave enough to have stars on her thing to allow them. So this was through her own website. I'll keep everyone anonymous.
Okay.
Jodi Hildebrand is a farce. Her therapy will warp you into believing you inherited shame and a pocket full of insecurities that are inherent to the human race, likely due to poor parenting. She likes to lay blame on others, separate her clients from their family, and rake in multiple therapy sessions by her self-prescribed theory of thought that is baseless. By the way, these are before all the Ruby stuff.
Ooh,
so you can see these patterns, right? Separating clients from her family. It's crazy. Okay, here's another one. I have close friends and family that have been seeing Jodi for years. Per their suggestion, I set up an appointment with her. I've never been more uncomfortable in my life during a therapy session. I was so disgusted by how she was manipulating the conversation and the behavior she was suggesting. My brother-in-law is currently enrolled at Harvard for grad school in psychology. He was able to help me voice where my discomfort was coming from. Needless to say, this woman plays God. She sets her clients up to depend on only her so she can keep collecting your money. She reminds me of the abuser in an abusive relationship. She isolates her clients, there it is again, by setting up unrealistic expectations so they believe all their friends and family are toxic, leaving them only to depend on her and support her. It makes me sad to think how many relationships she has poorly hurt. Save your money. I'm skipping ahead because it's crazy. Save your money and sanity. Find a quality specialist with real credentials. Another one. I saw Jodi for years. She did more damage than good. I told her I suspected I had Asperger's syndrome, and she flat out told me I was wrong. Come to find out, I do. And as someone with autism spectrum disorder, I need counseling a little differently than others. If she had listened to me and been willing to work with me on getting a diagnosis, I could have saved a lot of pain and heartache.
Oh.
Another one. I can't believe this woman is even still in practice. I have never met anyone so manipulative and so projecting of their own issues.
Yeah.
This would be my mom as a therapist. Okay. I have recently come to realize that several other people's marriages all ended in a similar fashion while under her control. So again, there are dozens of these, and they all go back to these same things. So she definitely seemed to have a pattern. And I don't know what happened in her life that made her implement this pattern, but she clearly wanted to destroy marriages, destroy families.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre. So again, the two of them were sentenced up to 30 years each, 4 consecutive terms on 6 counts. And they both pled guilty to 4 of the 6. And the 4 youngest kids who weren't out of the house are now in the care of child protection. So it just goes on and on and on. So hopefully, I know this one was kind of all over the place, but it was because there were so many years of so much information. I really tried to condense down. Hopefully it was somewhat coherent, but...
We try to be coherent.
We tried.
Okay, we will take a quick break. We'll come back and stick with us on the Escape Pod. Hello, escape artists out there. Quick public service announcement. You hear us talk on the Escape Pod about the One Heart campus. To learn more about this place for hope and healing where lives are changed for the better, listen to the prologue episode at escapepod.live or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit oneheartrc.org. Welcome back into the Escape Pod. I'm Julie here with Charity, and we just wrapped up our Not Mother of the Year episode. The influencer being influenced in all the wrong ways. So before we wrap up, if you've been listening, I can't end on crazy, sad child abuse notes. So we look at something that we actually want to escape to in the coming days. Some place, something, some mindset where we would like to go. Charity, do you have some place in mind?
Well, it won't happen today, but I have new loungers. I've talked about new deck furniture where my big loungers came. And they have like head pillows that move up and down and they're big and white, so I can just go sleep out in the sun.
And it's going to be a nice weekend.
It'll be a nice weekend.
Good timing.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And then there's a friend's retirement party this afternoon. But we'll see if...
I'm already laughing because of our conversation before we started recording today.
Oh, I forgot to check, Julie. This might be the text you've been waiting for. Let's look.
So, backstory. Her husband is golfing as a precursor to the retirement party. And my question was, how much over par is he already? And clearly there was a response. Are you allowed to read it?
I don't know. You might have to edit this out. But here we go. This is what I live with.
Just censor it on your own.
So I can't because it's funny. Okay, so my text to Tim was, so Julie wants to know how much over par you are already. His response, I've missed more holes than a blind porn star. But I just shot a par on 17 without cheating.
Well, excellent.
So I have a feeling this retirement party is going to be, I'll be babysitting.
Congrats on the par on 17.
I told him congrats from Julie. So
that's pretty good.
He's like this all the time.
And on that note,
oh, help me.
Right. Where were we? I am escaping so it is going to be a nice weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was hoping to escape from concession stand duty, I am actually looking forward to hopefully catching a baseball game or two in nice weather.
Nice weather.
Because we really haven't had.
Oh, it's so nice when it's nice weather for sports.
So we're going to go, I think, because I'm down a child and now I'm down a husband because he went to do training today. And so I think we'll have a little date night at the ballpark, me and my 9-year-old.
Nice.
So that's what I hope to escape to.
Fun.
So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it so much. You know, we escape a little bit of our day-to-day lives in doing this podcast, and we actually have people listening. And so thank you to those of you who listen. And if you're an escape artist yourself, you know you can always write in and share your stories of escape as well. Do you want to give them all the places?
Yeah, I will. But I just also want to thank, there's some people who've been contributing to our cause outside of the podcast that we're assuming are coming through the podcast and going straight to our website. That's just like
pretty cool.
Pretty cool. What a blessing. And it's been fun to kind of watch all the states that are kind of coming online and the listenership growing. And it's really exciting. And we just want to thank you because obviously we can't do that. You all are doing that. And so please continue to share it. And then, stories of escape. I think there's more power in sharing stories from people either in studio or hearing it personally rather than looking at and researching stories and telling someone else's stories. So we really do want to hear from you, your stories of escape, and it can be escaping anything. I mean, clearly, you've got all kinds of leads to follow from my own antics, but then some of the stories we tell, or maybe you have an idea. I'm researching one now on squatters, and it's because, and I hope we can get my best friend to do this, she lives in California, had the wildest experience with squatters in the first home that they bought. And her telling of this story is the funniest thing you're going to ever hear. So I'm hoping to get her on the show. But, escaping things that are just kind of like random, and we hope you find it interesting because, we try to make it educational at the same time. But, so please write in. You can reach us at escapeartist@escapepod.live if you want to share any of those stories. If you want to reach out for just whatever reason, just because, maybe with a topic suggestion or anything, just because at escapepod.live. You can learn more and rate, review, subscribe through through our website or actually wherever you listen to your podcast, you're able to do that too. And it helps people find us and kind of get, higher up on the list of suggested listenings for them in the future.
Subscribe, share, also auto download. That's another great way to just make sure you're following week to week. So we usually publish a new episode on Fridays. Sometimes we're able to throw in some bonus content as well. Not every week, but every so often. So, keep
well,
listening.
The goal too, I think, is, so you understand why we're putting so much effort into the podcast to help support our nonprofit that we work for.
That's the goal.
And we can do that through ad revenue. And that's how we monetize it. The patrons, though, have been great. We're really, really appreciative of them. We're really working on trying to get more bonus content. It's just it is time. It is time. So it'll come, I promise. But that's really where we're trying to get to, which means we have to hit 1,000 downloads a month on a consistent basis. And we're about 35% there on a consistent basis. So definitely not bad for a brand new show. I think we're doing pretty good, but
we'll take
help
more.
us, please. Yes.
We'll take more listeners in a heartbeat. So she mentioned all the places you can find us. And of course, again, the website, escapepod.live. We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
So stay resilient
and keep laughing.